Thank you. Mr. Berzinas, if I pronounce that right, followed by...
Yeah, it's Berzinas, thank you.
Berzinas, followed by Alan Duran.
Hi, I'm Tony Berzinas. I'm the president of the Bethel Island Municipal Improvement District, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Bradford Island Reclamation District 259, the Jersey Island Reclamation District 830, the Iron House Sanitation District, and the Hotchkins Tract Reclamation District 799, specifically as it relates to the installation of these barriers on the West Falls River. I will be leaving a long text of a joint letter that the 5 of those districts put together for the Army Corps of Engineers. We, of course, realize that all of us realize that we're in a severe drought. However, I agree with most of the participants today that this is not a urgent or emergency situation. It was a created and a negligent situation. Speaking to the installation of these barriers and the lack of environmental review, these barriers were proposed more than 20 months ago. We actually put a letter in from the Bethel Island Municipal Improvement District in April of 2014 in opposition and asking for answers to the negative mitigated declaration, the CEQA declaration. We also, this letter that I'm giving you today with the detailed letters from the 4 districts specifically, also was requesting information and asking that that the environmental review not be just shortchanged. I mean, to say that the environmental concerns were cavalier would probably be a compliment. They were erroneous. They were maliciously neglected. Nobody's paid attention to anything as far as environmental concerns are. And then as it speaks to my island that I live on, I represent an island that has the largest population within the delta of an island, a reclaimed island. And that's 2,500 permanent residents. In the peak summertime, probably 6,000. If you look on that graph that was so graciously provided by the Restore the Delta, the Fisherman's Cut north-south slough that goes right through that False River sign, they've estimated the flows of that to increase by 5-fold. If you look at the very south of that, you'll see a very deep dip into the island that I live on. That dip is called Horseshoe Bend. It's a very, very fragile port of our island. It's actually awaiting repairs right now of about $3.5 million that we just got approved. There's been no mitigation measures put in place. There's been no funding put in place to protect that cut. That cut represents the Achilles heel of this project, because now that Fisherman's Cut is a shotgun right into that cut. And when it hits that Horseshoe Bend where we've already got severe scouring, if we lose the island, all this salinity talk you've been having today is pointless. And we've got no measures they're putting in place. They're not deploying any materials throughout any of the islands that I mentioned. They're not deploying any barges with materials in and around those locations for extra scouring and damage that's going to be caused by these unmeasured, unresearched flows. Dutch Slough, which is not on that map, but it's down lower, it comes in through Big Break. You guys, I can't even believe you're not even paying attention to that, because the salinity flows up that is going to increase tremendously as well. All I'm saying is that don't sacrifice and accept the fact that this is an emergency now. We've had 20 months to even study this particular proposal, and nothing was done. Nobody has put in place anything to protect the life and safety of the residents on my island. And I know water quality is important, but the life and safety of 2,500 permanent residents on that island are also important. So I will leave the text of this for your benefit, and I want to thank all the presenters today, and I want to say that the 5 groups that I mentioned and many other folks also are not going to be silent, and we support the Restore the Delta effort and the other efforts here. And one comment for all the water flooding.
Just make it quick.
I will. This is not even mine. But for all of that water flooding for the wetlands and stuff, don't forget, when you do that, you also recharge the ground aquifers, and that's never been mentioned, but it still is beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Duran? Tim O'Laughlin, followed by Roger Mammon. Right? Oh, it's a maybe, anyway. Roger Mammon, followed by Sina Va.
Chair Marcus, member of the board, thank you for listening to me. I'm a resident of East Contra Costa County, which is in the West Delta, and everything I hear today more or less makes a delta out to be an inanimate object where water just flows one way. My personal view of the delta is like a human lung. Our delta is one of the few and the largest inverted delta in the world. It's a tidal estuary. Those flows make it breathe. It creates life. And a healthy delta is important to the residents that live in the delta for their water quality standards and their standard of life. For farming in the delta, there are a lot of farmers markets in the area. They grow healthy food and a diverse array of product. The environment, we talked about the environment and the needs of the freshwater flow to protect our wildlife, fisheries, tourism. The delta supports a huge recreational and commercial fishing when the water is able to get out to the bay to create the Dungeness crabs and the other fisheries. Those fisheries, especially the commercial, reach from Monterey all the way up to Oregon. And they support all the coastal communities because the redwood trees are all gone. They used to be logging towns, now they're fishing towns. Those flows will help eliminate or reduce invasive aquatic weeds. Low flows to the delta have also created spots in the back end sloughs where the toxic blue-green algae is now starting to appear. So I would just like to say that the delta is on life support, it's on oxygen, and by God, you need to turn the oxygen back up and bring it back to life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sina Va, followed by Kyle Jones. And
Hi,
I know
my
you're
name is-
speaking for Jessica Lopez.
Yes. My name is Tina Va with Restore the Delta. We at Restore the Delta want to make note that many people arrived this morning to make a public comment, but they were not able to wait past 1 p.m. And also many more could not take a day off of work to attend this workshop. I will be reading a comment by Jessica Lopez, who is the vice chair of the Concal Valley Maidu tribe. The following is her comment. The California Water Fixed Tunnels and TUCP is going to rein into extinction our Chinook salmon. The land and our water is sacred. Water is not a commodity. Save the Delta. Stop favoritism. Tribal approved California Indians. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much. Kyle Jones, followed by Richard Murat.
Good afternoon, Kyle Jones with Sierra Club, California. We urge the board to take steps to prevent the disaster that occurred last year for many of the runs of salmon, and also to prevent the continuing disaster that's occurring before the smelts. We are deeply concerned about the temperature modeling that we saw today, and support some comments that Doug made earlier about needing a cushion to really prevent the mortality that we saw last year. We also would like the board to spend a bit more time just on management that occurs in the Sacramento Valley. We need to maintain the cold water flows that are necessary, and we just don't want to see any more, illegal diversions, or, we want to make sure that what's occurring in the valley is done legally, and what models projected, the inputs to models actually occur. Additionally, the board should maintain the standards for outflow and salinity in the Delta, and resist calls for further unsustainable exports south of the Delta. The health of the Delta is in peril, and we must do what we can to prevent the extinction of species there. We'd like to to mention that the board has received a bit more funding through the proposed budget, and also expansive powers. and that there are more options that we have this year than last year to deal with the situations, particularly in the San Joaquin Valley. And so we think that those options should be considered more deeply than just sending more water south. We'd also like to comment on our support for curtailments. Given the conditions of the Delta, we cannot allow people to take water that's desperately needed for the environment. The board should take necessary curtailments to preserve water available and prevent any agreements that might restrict its ability to curtail in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi there.
Murat.
Oh, nice to see you. And
I represent
followed by Mike
myself.
Wade. Followed by Mike Wade.
I feel so rushed. There was a question earlier asked of the scientists how they felt about the fishery protection plan, and I really wanted to answer that, and I'm really fearful about that. It's a really ragged plan. There's no contingency, and furthermore, the history of the system is water gets lost. What goes down the river doesn't always get to the Delta, so that's a further concern that there might be some cruel, ugly surprises here later this year. The board must declare and change societal thinking very soon that while this current drought is caused by a low precipitation, it is a water shortage that we're going to have in perpetuity. When the precipitation returns, we're always going to have water shortages. I just can't imagine it being different. Enforcement. The public's confidence in government depends on effective enforcement and compliance by everyone with water rights decisions. It just has to happen. And the public at their residences are being asked to conserve pretty drastically, but the protection of some of the beneficial uses they really appreciate don't seem to be commensurate, and that's causing a lack of public confidence in government. Endangered species and those that are going to become endangered, I believe you're not getting the best advice from the agencies, state and federal agencies. I heard that earlier. It's important what they say and what they don't say, and what they're not doing is giving you a prognosis. They're feeding you metadata, but they're not telling you how close are we to the brink. Reservoirs have already been touched on. Temporary water transfers, especially transfers by withdrawal from storage, they must be accommodated where they're reasonable, and they must be matched with reasonable permit conditions to mitigate the adverse effects of those transfers, and conservation, storage, replenishment. Let those who benefit financially also share in the risk of continued drought. There's viable free market solutions for almost anyone that wants to buy water to take it from someone who's willing to sell it. And some of those are oftentimes non-essential and marginally economic, if not subsidized farming. Thank you. And you're doing better than would be perceived today, so thank you for your hard work.
Thank you for that. That's not even a thank you, I think. I'm just going to say thank you for that. Yeah, that's thank you. It's a hard space to be. Hi, Mr. Wade, followed by Jacqueline Laughlin Shaw.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Marcus and board members. I'm Mike Wade. I'm with the Farm Water Coalition, a nonprofit education organization on farm water issues. I'm here today to provide some perspective on how farmers have survived these deep water supply cuts the last couple of years through storage, through carryover water, and through use of groundwater. There's been some discussion about how farms haven't been harmed by this. There have been some long-term planning. There have been some issues that have helped farmers maintain production through this historic drought. The Farm Water Coalition conducted a survey over the last 2 years, over 5.8 million acres across the Central Valley. It covered an area that's encompassing about 130 irrigation and water districts. And the survey covers about 60% of the state's irrigated agriculture. And that survey area covers, from Reading to Bakersfield, represents agricultural water supplies that have been cut on average by 70%, a 70% cut. The historic surface water allocation for that service area is just under 11.1 million acre feet. In 2014, that surface allocation was 4.2 million acre feet, or 38% of historic. In 2015, that surface allocation has dropped another almost million acre feet to 3.3 million acre feet, or about 30% of what the historic average delivery is. 3/4 of California's irrigated farmland is receiving 20% or less of its historic surface supply. And 44% of California's irrigated farmland is getting a zero surface allocation. On fallowed acres, DWR did a survey that working with NASA on satellite data. They released some statistics in November actually showing that 692,000 acres had been fallowed in 2014. And they compared 2014 fallowed and summer idled land with the same survey area in 2011. And by showing the change and the increase in 2014, they determined that the 692,000 acres is closer to the actual drought-caused fallowed land that we're experiencing. We're also doing satellite monitoring and waiting for the end of May for the first round of imagery to compare that with last May, and we'll be following up with updates May, June, July, and August of this year. And then last, to close, I want to talk briefly about water use efficiency investments that agriculture has undertaken. Since 2003, California farmers have invested over $3 billion installing upgraded irrigation systems on more than 2.5 million acres. And at $1,200 an acre, that's a big investment in a stranded asset in areas that have been just absolutely cut to the bone. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, can I ask a question? And I know this isn't the time to start asking lots of questions given the hour and the agenda we have before us, and this is also not the forum to resolve the debate or dialogue about the unemployment issues in agriculture. But do you have any comment on that based on the story today versus the UC Davis estimates?
The employment issues?
Yeah, can you illuminate that at all? I've seen both slides today, but also a number of things flying around today, and I know that other people will be trying to figure out where the truth lies, but I'm sort of curious as to your reaction to that.
I think it represents the amount of groundwater pumping that's been taken, the amount of storage water or minimal amount that was available, and carryover water that farmers saved last year or bought last year and put into storage to have available this year so they could continue to work their farms and grow crops. We know that there's been a massive shift of irrigation water from field crops, pasture land, and some forage crops that serve our state's large dairy industry. And that irrigation water is being used to irrigate crops that are labor intensive. And so it's natural that we would see a continuation at some level of the employment that we've seen in the past. What was left out of comments this morning about that employment is the early 2015 employment numbers. What I understand in April or May is down 6,000 jobs. So we need to follow that and track it this year and see what happens as well to get a better picture.
I think I saw Sandy Schuer was here earlier, and we talked in the hallway about this. I think that there seem to be some discrepancies with that information.
Just know if they were counting different things.
Yeah, and also some of those ag jobs, may not be included in the count. Yeah, so I think the best thing is to coordinate with CDFA because they've been in discussions with UC Davis about those discrepancies.
Yeah, and lastly, those jobs are not spread evenly across the state. Some of the heaviest hit areas are focused in some of the areas that have had the steepest water supply cuts.
Right, and where we're delivering food boxes and bottled water and the like, all
right.
Same area.
37% unemployment or whatever it is on some of those west side towns.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just thought I'd ask as long as you were here. Ms. Shaw, great. Thank you for staying with us, followed by John Rubin.
Thank you very much to Madam Chair and the board for the opportunity of expressing our concerns. I'm Jackie Lachlan Shaw, grower west of Lodi and 20 miles from Rio Vista. My comment is timed 2 minutes. Plans are to insert 2 40-foot wide tunnels. That's for 35 miles along the scenic highway of Sacramento Delta River. Fix-its mean more fix-its. Drought means more dust to dust. Salt in soils and earthquakes. Property values will drop statewide. Food prices will soar. My late dad, who put in 1 million hours in a lifetime, did not invest in the Mojave Desert. Currently, Lodi growers research data showed $5.5 billion industry, including agritourism like Zinfest. Uh-oh, I can't ad lib to make my 2 minutes. Delta area figures on impact by tunnels would mean a $7 billion loss in livelihoods with recreation and food crops. 90% of Californians live 30 miles from the coast. Truly, California's legacy is desalination at 20 testing points since 1970s. I did study dates with an inventor of desalination, and he went back to Israel and Australia, and so desalination since 1970s. Business jobs can develop like learning from Navy ships. USGS maps show subtropical soil for San Joaquin County. I emphasize county. It gets confused with Central Valley. As we look at maps, the rest of Central Valley, about 28 counties, show semi-arid land. That includes the oil town of Bakersfield Basin. No more comment. Destroying the Sacramento Delta plus taking our groundwater is drastic and not necessary. Please honor the natural water cycle shown by a great USDA poster, Delta-like. My father put in a lifetime 1 million hours besides World War II service of 5 major battles. And his oldest daughter is going to keep the fight for the vineyard I got to help him plant. We hire my nephew, the labor company that my father helped him start his business. We've got something good going. Let's please keep it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Mr. Rubin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is John Rubin, General Counsel for the San Luis and Delta Mendota Water Authority. I have 3 comments that I will keep brief. First, I do want to thank you and your staff for a lot of hard work during this drought. I know that a significant amount of time and a lot of sacrifice has been made by the staff and by you. Without your actions, I think we would all be worse off than we are today. Second,
That's better. I'll take that as a thank you, too. Thank you.
It should
like
be.
The other one.
My second and third comments relate to a comment that you made, Madam Chair, in your opening remarks concerning balance. During these times of shortages, a significant role for the State Water Board is balancing. And I would characterize it as balancing between the water needs of people and protections for fish and wildlife. And so my second comment is that as you are conducting this balancing, it's critically important that you have complete and accurate data on water use. And maybe relating to the second session that you may hold today, we encourage the State Water Board to continue with its effort to supplement and refine your water right database. My third comment relates to the other side of the balancing and the critically important need for complete, accurate, and honest assessments of the impacts of stressors on fish and wildlife. Oftentimes, impacts are conflated, and people are speaking to you about impacts, particularly of the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project. and conflate those impacts with impacts of drought or impacts of other stressors. I do want to note that this year, previously stored water is going to be used to try to minimize the impacts of temperature below Shasta Dam. Also this summer, the majority, if not all, of the water flowing into the Delta and all of the water that's likely flowing out of the Delta is previously stored water. Significance here, both in terms of temperature as well as flow in and out of the Delta, is without that previously stored water, conditions would be significantly worse. And let me talk for a second about the other stressors. We've filed a letter with the State Water Board a month or so ago that raised this issue. I did want to expand on it. We believe that the board should be creating a forum where other stressors can be discussed. I appreciate board member Didi Diadamo's questions earlier, but I don't think they were answered. Question about predation. We did see a slide from the Bay Institute, John Rosenfield, showing that 90% of the salmon that survive past Red Bluff are not making it past the Delta or to the Delta. Why? Where's that discussion? So you're going to take an action, or an action's been taken now to try to improve conditions to Red Bluff, but there's no discussion about how to avoid some of the predation. There's no discussion if that 90% is higher this year. Do we expect it to be higher given conditions? Another point that was made by the board member Diadamo was hyacinth. Question was asked, is that a problem? And the answer I heard was no. And I don't understand that answer. The explanation was the hyacinths in the South Delta, and that's not a problem for pelagic fish. Surprise to me, given the fact that all of that hyacinth was being taken out in the January, February, March timeframe at a time where the projects, Central Valley Project, State Water Project operations are significantly constrained. To give you a sense of the issue, 90,000 cubic yards of hyacinth were removed by the San Luis Delta Mendota Water Authority on behalf of Reclamation, DWR, on behalf of Boating and Waterways. And I do want to connect this.
And you should wrap as you
I understand. The issue of other stressors is critical, I believe, as you're thinking about water right issues. It's important because you're being asked to affect how water's released, how diversions are occurring, with the idea that more flow is better. Without having a discussion about other stressors, you don't know if that's true. What are the mechanisms? What are the functions that flow's supposed to serve? Are they going to be served? Those questions are not being asked or answered for you. Also, there may be activities that can be done to protect fish that do not require the trade-off, taking water from people or from farms. Again, that question was asked. Mr. Wilcox was asked, are there activities? He very quickly said no, but there was no discussion about that. Why can't some of these other stressors be addressed? And I believe the governor's proclamations and orders have provided some guidance on that. And so with that, I will end. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I just have a suggestion. I'm all with you on the other stressors issue, for, big picture, especially as we go forward on our water quality control plan. But in the middle of an emergency, just because we're all having to move so quickly and just do the best we can, my question to you is, maybe the noodle on this, but what can be done in short order? I mean, as an example, I'm looking at the Sac Valley presentation, and they had, just a couple of small actions, the KLOG, Knights Landing outfall gates, and then that project at Painter's Riffle that they took care of within a 6-month period. I mean, just really surprising that something like that could be done. Those are stressors. And so what could be done for your organization in collaboration with others to look at some actions that can be taken in short order during this emergency situation, not to discount the bigger picture. I mean, we need to do that as well.
I think that's fair, and I will go back. I do encourage the board to create a forum. We have experts in this area. The fishery agencies should be able to provide that information to you. Interested parties like the Water Authority and others should have an opportunity to question as well as present additional information as you suggested. Thank you.
With that, I'd like to
I think
open.
Tim, I saw Tim come back.
Did
in.
Tim
I
just
think
come
he
back?
He's been.
Oh, hi. You passed. Okay. You'll save it for the second issue. There you go. That's good thinking on your part. So I want to turn to my colleagues. If there's, I know we will individually be giving response to staff. We'll be digesting everything we heard today as well as the written materials. But if there's anything you want to throw into the mix today while we're all here, this would be the time. It's a lot to digest.
I just want to, again, compliment everyone for working so hard on this, and even for those that, have concerns. There are, as we've seen, a lot of trade-offs. People have been really thoughtful and creative, and again, want to go back to what I said about monitoring. I think that's a real linchpin in the plan. As long as that monitoring and, constant focus on, if these targets are being met, then we've got that contingency portion of the plan, and it seems to me it's adaptive management, because then it's not just monitoring, but it would require coming back with some suggestions on how to make corrections. So thank you for all your work, staff, and everyone else on this.
Yeah, thanks for everybody's hard work in this TUCP process. I think a couple of issues emerged from the discussion today for me. As I noted in my earlier comments, I think that the temperature management plan is being managed too close to the edge. And I thought that fishery agencies didn't quite characterize the bandwidth of margin of error. Although they did touch on, the daily excursions. It's always interesting to look at, averages, daily averages versus actual diurnal excursions, and so they did indicate that. But I wanted us to take a hard look at our management objectives in the Sacramento River Temperature Management Plan to build in a little more of a safety factor than what I saw today. And maybe using some of the suggested lower temperatures instead of 56. I'm not saying it has to, I think we need to take a harder look at it. And I thought that the water bird panel brought up, they asserted, and I think we need to look into this, that commitments that have been made through previous decisions are not being met. In terms of deliveries that are expected to wildlife refuges. So I think we need to look at that again to make sure that as we move through this summer, our legal obligations are being taken care of. And those are the two things that came out of today's discussion. Other than I just want to support staff's efforts today. I think we worked really hard to try to meet multiple objectives. I don't want to give any short shrift to the profound stresses that communities are enduring. They're dependent on local agriculture and have become dependent on these deliveries to the projects. We really understand this is serious. And thanks to staff to try to work hard with the projects to do the best we can. But fish and wildlife have to be protected too.
I will concur with my colleagues in thanking the staff for your just tremendous sacrifice and hard work on this and many other issues associated with the drought, as well as staff who are holding the fort on other issues while we are focusing on these. And also thanks to all the presenters today. You all did a really fabulous job. I certainly would second the two comments that Board Member Moore made with respect to operations, temperature, looking at a sort of a buffer zone area there. Also, I also find the refuge discussion panel very, very informative, and I would also ask staff to look into some of the suggestions made from the refuge contractors in particular. And then the third issue that I would like staff to look into, I think it was brought up, not sure by whom, but it was the issue regarding some sort of a hindcast consideration for the state and federal project operations as a part of this. I'm not sure what that would look like, but the idea of, obviously, lessons learned is always a good one to incorporate into difficult scenarios such as this.
Thanks. I don't think I can distill my issues quite as sharply as you all did. I just counted, and I have about 30 thought bubbles in here for follow-up, and I'll want to sit down with staff and go through all of them, not just from the testimony today, but from the myriad papers that have been filed. It's interesting, this workshop, when paired with the last workshop, I think makes a more complete picture of the various points of view, and it just brought home to me just the fact that we're in a horrible situation where, we are skirting the edge of tragedy in so many different ways. I mean, somebody said where you stand depends on where you sit. I can't remember the quote who first said that, but I also said what you see depends on where you sit as well, which is not a critique. It's just a human dynamic. So I actually want to thank people, not just today, but the other day, for bearing with us and spending the time to just sit in the space where we're hearing those perceptions collectively as people have legitimate worries and fears about a range of issues, and our task is to try and make sense of them and find the smartest path. I found myself feeling that people had very valid points of view, even when they conflicted with other things that had been raised. It's kind of one of those both are true or all are true. Well, not all are true, but most of it was true today. And some of it is just we do have the benefit of sitting with more information because of the nature of where we are than other people have. But even so, you've pointed us in direction of stuff to focus on. And I really think it is up to us to look at it afresh and decide whether to affirm the actions, put conditions on the actions, and really maybe even move more quickly than the schedule that Ms. Riddle talked about. And I want to be able to take this all and go over my notes, talk to folks, and sleep on it. There were some things today and in the written materials that we've seen that I'm worried about, and I want to make sure that we navigate this as thoughtfully as we could. To spend this much time just listening to people suspending prior beliefs or any protectiveness or defensiveness, and just where people's concerns and try them all on for size. So I just commit that I'll put in the time and we'll do it quickly, but I really do appreciate it. I'm worried about a lot of the things that were raised today. But thank you. And on that hindcast, we did ask for a lessons learned. We just didn't get much of one. So yeah. I do think we need
some
to
parameters.
Think about that carefully versus just saying it again.
Yeah, and I realize this is just one issue, but I think it's a big deal. And when we have lower flows and higher temperatures, that the harmful algae bloom aspects, I just want to make sure, I'm digging into the notes here, that our scientists are collecting information on that, and we're learning from, putting the drought barrier in and these other issues with respect to that, which has a direct impact on human health and water contact.
And since the chair mentioned one of my favorite quotes, it's from Nelson Mandela.
Is it really?
Yes, where you stand depends on where you sit.
You know what my favorite Nelson Mandela quote is?
No, which one is that?
Used all my letters, triple word score, I'm out of here. Very cool guy. With that, we will, unless there's anything else, or staff wants to
Favorite Nelson Mandela quotes, anyone?
All right, now, if I didn't have, I feel like we're not giving this the time. I mean, frankly, again, it's hard to guess right, but if we didn't have another very important matter coming up, I would want to ask lots of questions to you throughout the day, but also now, but I just fear that another terrible choice, and that terrible choice is to take a break and move to the next item, unless anybody objects. All right, 10-minute break. Or do you want 15? I suggest you get nuts or, 15? 10? 10-minute break.